There might be a post that's too long for people to read if you include everything from your first job when you were 14 to now. But if you're not writing enough, you run the risk of being too vague. So what is the correct length of these types of posts?
Yeah, so I like to often pretend I'm writing in tweets because tweets force us to adhere to a certain character limit. And I'm not going to give a specific number of characters here, but I think if you think of each of those three sections, the reminding people what you do, articulating what you're looking for, and knowing your deal breakers, if you could get each of those into the length of 1 or 1.5 tweets, I think that would be a good length to aim for. And another little formatting tip for people is that use each of those sections as kind of an independent paragraph. So make sure you have a space in between each of those. Otherwise, this post is going to just look like what I often refer to as a giant wall of text. And when people see, 20 lines of text with no spaces in between paragraphs, their eyes just kind of stress out and they go into overwhelm and they're probably not going to read it. But if you separate each section into little paragraphs, or sometimes I refer to it as little chunks of text, makes it a lot easier for people to consume.
I do want to get into the last component of this post, and those are deal breakers. Can you give us an example of how to politely yet firmly post your deal breaker?
Yeah, so let's say you are only looking for jobs that are remote or in a couple of different cities. At the end of this open to work post, you could just say something like, at this time, I'm only looking for full-time remote roles or in-person opportunities in San Diego and Chicago. That's a simple, short, and very concise way to communicate that. But if you don't do that, then you may be inundated with opportunities that don't fit that criteria. And let's face it, in your job search, time is really critical, and you don't want to be wasting time trying to field messages or opportunities that might not fit what you're looking for.
Sarah, and aside from customizing the open to work feature on LinkedIn, how else can job seekers use LinkedIn more strategically?
Yeah, so a couple of things that you could do would be to try and activate your existing connections on LinkedIn. And what that means is, instead of just posting a post on your LinkedIn profile that goes out to everyone, try and think about the people that you're connected to that you have pretty authentic relationships with. And to kind of define what that means, I define that as if you were to show up in their LinkedIn inbox and they would actually recognize your name and have an inkling of who you are and what you do, maybe remember the last time you interacted or how you met, those types of people would be really great to send a private message to on LinkedIn. And the good news is, if you write this open to work post, you can use that as part of what you might send these people as a one-on-one message. Now, what you could add to that one-on-one message, so it doesn't come across as just a template that you've cut and pasted to 50 people, try and at the beginning of that message include what I call an anchor, meaning like a reminder of how you met or the last time you had a conversation, just to humanize that message. And like I said, make it feel less like something that you cut and pasted to a bunch of people, and remind them of any similarities or interactions you've had in the past.
Using your network is obviously key. And Sarah, we've seen in headlines, there's been layoffs recently, especially in the tech industry. And the beginning of the year is really a good time where people are job searching. What is your one biggest piece of advice for people who are on the hunt for a new opportunity?
So for people who are looking for jobs right now, I think the most important thing you can do is to leverage and activate relationships that you currently have, or seek to foster relationships with people who are working at the companies that you want to work at. A study from the US Department of Labor and Statistics said that 85% of jobs are either found or filled through your network. And so by leveraging LinkedIn, you can really do that. And another thing you can do on LinkedIn, which I think is somewhat underutilized, is the power of LinkedIn groups or communities. Because when you post a single post inside one of those groups, it's being seen by a lot of people. So it's a leverage of your time. You could send one-on-one messages to a bunch of people, but if you're in a group or community on LinkedIn that is very specific to your industry or niche, you are more likely to get responses than if you are maybe just emailing or messaging 50 people, let's say, on LinkedIn. And even in those groups, sometimes it just might be about bringing awareness for you to opportunities, like you said, Brittany, that maybe you didn't even know existed. So you could post something like your open to work post, but say, I'm looking for new opportunities. If your team is hiring, or if you've recently been hired, I'd love to connect, or something like that.
I appreciate your insights, and I know that they'll be helpful to all those on the hunt for a new job. Sarah Doody, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.